Anna, are you there? Anna, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
2020. This is Mayor Rich Sandsberg. I would like to make clear for the record of this meeting, and it should be reflected in the minutes, that this special City Council meeting of April 14, 2020 of the Woodland City Council will be conducted pursuant to Governor Newsom's Executive Order N-29-20. This meeting is being held by teleconference. Council members will be participating via teleconference. Those locations are not listed on the agenda and are not accessible to the public. The public is encouraged to listen to the City Council meeting live on Woodland TV Channel 20 and also by going to the City of Woodland website at www.cityofwoodland.org/. Member of the public wishes to make a comment in a general public comment or on a specific agenda item, there are two ways to do that. First, members of the public were invited to leave a voicemail message at area code 530-661-5900. All voicemail messages received by 6 p.m. today will be played during the City Council meeting and read into the record at the appropriate time. Any of the member of the public watching the live stream who wishes to make a comment on an item that is being heard may submit an email to the city clerk at councilmeetings@cityofwoodland.org prior to the public comment on that item. Email comments submitted to be read into the record shall be no more than 3 minutes long when read aloud. Please include the agenda item on the subject line. At this time, Madam Clerk, it is appropriate for you to conduct roll call.
Thank you. Councilmember Barajas,
Here.
Councilmember Fernandez, we know is absent.
Present.
Councilmember Fernandez?
Present.
Oh, thank you.
Cool.
Mayor Lansberg,
Present.
Councilmember Rodriguez,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Stallard. Mayor Pro Tem Stallard,
I had muted. I'm present.
thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Are you waiting for me to say I'm present?
No, I heard you. Mayor, did you want to continue?
Yes, please continue since we have all 5 members.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Stallard, can you hear me well?
Yeah.
Councilmember Barajas, can you hear me well?
Yes.
Councilmember Rodriguez, can you hear me well?
Yes.
Councilmember Fernandez, can you hear me well?
Yes.
Thank you. And do each of you have a copy of the agenda for this meeting? Councilmember Stallard, Councilmember Barajas, Councilmember Rodriguez, Councilmember Fernandez.
Yes.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, have you posted the agenda location reasonably accessible to the public?
Yes, I have.
Other city officials present for this meeting identify themselves and introduce themselves and their positions, but the record can reflect their attendance.
Yes, Mayor, members of the council, Ken Hyatt, interim city manager, is present.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Ethan Walsh, attending on behalf of the city attorney's office.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Ana Gonzalez, City Clerk.
Mayor, I will read the other members of staff that are present on the call and available for council questions if needed. Derek Caff, Police Chief, Eric Zane, our Fire Chief, Christine Engel, Community Services Director, Greg Locke, Public Works Director, Brent Meyer, Acting Community Development Director, Kim McKinney, Finance Officer, and Owen, our IT Manager, are all present and available.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Now, as we go through the agenda, I would request that before speaking, you should identify yourself before speaking each time. For example, this is Councilmember Barajas, etc. Let the individual speak, and please do not interrupt that individual. I would also ask, to the greatest extent possible, mute your phone so that we don't get unnecessary background noise. I would now like to advise all council members and the city clerk that any votes taken during this teleconference special meeting must be taken by roll call. I would ask Madam Clerk to take that roll call for any and all votes. Now we'll begin the agenda, starting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm going to ask Mayor Pro Tem Stouter to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Muted.
Thank you. Let's please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
And to
the republic
For which is
for which it stands,
one nation,
one nation
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible.
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. We're now going to item D on our agenda, public comment. Madam Clerk, as the council chambers are closed to the public, is there any member of the public who has submitted an email or left you a voicemail, the general public comment portion of this meeting?
No, none.
Thank you. In that case, we're going to go to item E, which is the council and staff statements and requests. I'm going to start with Mayor Pro Tem Stouter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really don't have a report today. I do, however, want to congratulate our colleague, Councilman Angel Barajas, on his designation as Supervisor-elect of the 3rd District. I know he'll do a great job for us, all in Woodland as well as Yolo County, and I wanted him to know how proud we are of him. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Barajas.
I don't have a report, but I'd like to thank the Mayor Pro Tem, Tom Stoller, for saying those kind words. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hope you have
Barajas.
as much fun as I did.
Councilmember Fernandez.
I've got no report, but congrats to Angel on the victory.
Thank you, Councilman Fernandez. Councilmember Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Deferring my comments. Congratulations, Councilmember Barajas, on your election as county supervisor.
Thank you, Councilmember Rodriguez. At this time, I would like to dedicate this special meeting tonight to a very special person. Tonight was the last shift for Woodland Police Officer Daryl Moore. After serving our community for 20 years, Daryl signed off at 4 p.m. today for the very last time. I wish Daryl a very happy retirement and thank you for your service. It's very much appreciated. And lastly, I too wish to congratulate our Councilmember Barajas on his victory for the supervisors. I know he's going to work hard for all the community that he represents, all Yolo County. At this time, I'm going to turn to the city manager for communications and review of the long-range calendar.
Thank you, Mayor. Just 2 quick reports for the council. First of all, I do want to acknowledge the tireless effort of our IT staff and city clerk, Ana Gonzalez, for getting tonight's agenda and meeting coordinated via video. So they've been working tirelessly to make sure this goes smoothly. So far, so good. I also want to report back that at the last council meeting, Councilmember Rodriguez suggested we reach out to Gloria Rodriguez here in our community, who had been volunteering to make masks for farm workers within our county. At that request and follow-up, we were successful in connecting her with our makerspace and our library staff, who are now deploying our sewing machines in the makerspace to support her efforts and get those masks into the hands of the farm workers within our community. Also wanted to acknowledge that Square One, our makerspace, has also been using its 3D printer to make face shields for the healthcare workers over at Woodland Memorial. So good work happening all over the community and also here within our city staff. So turning real quick to the long-range calendar, next Tuesday, which is April 21st, we have a regular scheduled meeting. That meeting will be held in a similar format to this evening with video capability, with the primary agenda topic on that meeting being the budget workshop. So we'll be introducing for the council some preliminary budget projections based on renewed revenue declines based on information and budget scenarios really informed largely by the Great Recession back in 2008, significant anticipation and reduced sales tax revenue as well as TOT. So we'll be presenting what that budget forecast looks like under this new scenario, and then seeking guidance from council as we move into the final series of council budget meetings. We will also be introducing the topic of the Measure J ballot renewal. So as you know, the Measure J sales tax measure expires in 2022, and the council has asked that we initiate the renewal of that measure this November on the ballot. So we'll be introducing that topic for the council to receive input regarding the duration, the scope, and the intended use of the Measure J should it be placed on the ballot in November. With that, the next meeting is currently scheduled for the 28th of April, which would be a special meeting for the council's prior request to hold weekly meetings. Given the slower pace now of the COVID-19 situation, it might be worth council consideration to defer that meeting and just plan on the next regular council meeting being May 5th. So welcome the council's input on that suggestion. With that, the other two big items that will be coming forward to the council for consideration will be associated with the Beamer Way, No Place Like Home and shelter projects, which we've been working actively with our nonprofit partners to complete the funding as well as prepare the bid package requirements for proceeding with construction of those improvements. So we'll be bringing those items forward for council consideration and moving forward with the next phase of those projects. That concludes my overview of the long range, Mayor. I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, City Manager. And yes, I do agree that it's probably time to go back. I'm going to recommend to council that we modify our scheduling to go back to our regular calendar to be first and third Tuesdays. In the event that we need a special meeting, an urgent meeting, that can be called in a matter of statutory period. So I'm hoping to hear from council members that we can go back to the regular calendar starting. We'll cancel the April 28th meeting, and then in May we'll go back to our regular calendar. Can I hear from council members on that recommendation?
Mr.
Sounds
Mayor.
like a good idea, Rich.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I'll do this in order. How about starting with Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor Landsberg. I agree with that idea. Thank you.
Okay. And Barajas?
I agree with that too. Thank you.
Councilmember Fernandez?
I'm on board.
Councilmember Rodriguez?
I agree with the recommendation, Mr. Mayor, and we'll be available on call as needed.
Thank you. So, Mr. City Manager, if we can make those changes necessary and thank staff for being available every week. It's been valuable for council and for the members of the community to be updated on this horrific COVID-19 pandemic. We appreciate all the efforts of staff, including IT, making this happen over these last several weeks. Is there anything else on the long-range calendar? Hearing nothing else, we're going to move to item F, the consent calendar. Items F2, 3, and 4. Is there a member of the council who wishes to pull an item from the consent calendar? Hearing none, is there a motion on the consent calendar, items 2, 3, and 4?
Move to approve. This is Councilmember Rodriguez.
I'll second Councilmember Barajas.
The motion is by Councilmember Rodriguez and seconded by Councilmember Barajas. Madam Clerk, a voice vote, please.
Thank you. I will now take a roll call vote. Barajas,
Yes.
Fernandez, Fernandez,
Yes.
Landsberg,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Stallard. Mayor Pro Tem Stallard,
Yes.
thank you.
Hold on.
Items 2 to 4 carry on a 5-0 roll call vote.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We're now going to go to item G, reports of our city manager, starting with item G5, the YOLO COVID-19 Nonprofit Relief Initiative. Mr. City Manager, please.
Actually, Mayor, if you wouldn't mind entertaining a request to reorder the agenda items this evening. Dr. Ron Chapman is with us, and he has requested the opportunity to be first up with a general update on response and preparedness that his office has been involved in. So I'd like to submit that request to the council for consideration to reorder items 5 and 6.
This is Mayor Landsberg. I'm good with that request. Any other council member wish to be heard on that? Hearing none, Mr. City Manager, have our guest go ahead.
Yes, just a quick introduction. So I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, know Dr. Ron Chapman has been working tirelessly over the last month to ensure the protection of the health and safety of residents throughout Yolo County. He has graciously offered to provide the council and the community a direct report as to what his office is currently tracking relative to the pandemic here in Yolo County as well as statewide. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Chapman at this time to have him give the council an overview. Welcome the council to engage questions to Dr. Chapman after his presentation.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent. This is Dr.
Yes.
Ron Chapman, Yolo County Public Health Officer. I greatly appreciate the invitation to inform the Woodland City Council and your constituents to update you all on the status of the pandemic in our county. I've got several topics that I'll cover and updates, and then happy to have a conversation, answer questions, hear your feedback. I do want to thank you all for your amazing leadership and support during this incredibly devastating, catastrophic, once-in-a-lifetime crisis that we're experiencing. I know that all of you have risen to the occasion. I know the people of Woodland have certainly risen to the occasion, and folks all over the county. So huge thanks to all of you. As of today, there are approximately 24,000 diagnosed confirmed laboratory cases of COVID-19 in California and 725 deaths. In Yolo County, we have a very informative dashboard, which is tracking these numbers daily. The dashboard today is reporting 102 cases countywide and 4 deaths countywide. The city of Woodland has 43 cases. The dashboard is part of our highly informative website at www.yolocounty.org/coronavirus. From there, you'll find extensive resources on a number of the topics that I'll be discussing and many more, and the link to our dashboard. I do want to point out that laboratory testing remains a huge challenge. Very, very difficult, unfortunate. At this point in time, for example, we have only tested 0.5% of the people of Yolo County. That's consistent as well for the state of California. So we've not even tested 1% of our population. Lab capacity remains very, very limited. There's backlogs. Tests sometimes are taking up to a week to come back, which really hampers our ability to track and contain this pandemic. I am happy to report that the stay-at-home order and the social distancing that's going on in our communities is having an impact. Tomorrow is 4 weeks from when the stay-at-home order was issued in our county. One of the ways we're able to notice that impact is by what's happening in our healthcare system. So our hospitals have a low census. There are a number of beds that are open in our hospitals. Our clinics are seeing a much lower volume of sick people than usual, and that has a lot to do with people taking this pandemic very seriously, staying at home as much as they can, and using the social distancing measures such as staying 6 feet apart, washing your hands regularly, and if you're sick, staying home and trying to isolate yourself. One of the topics that has come up recently is around worker safety. There are essential businesses that remain open to keep our society functioning, and we have essential workers in those essential businesses who are helping to keep society running. So we want to protect those people as much as we can, and there's a number of ways to do that. We recently put out information for our ad workers who are arriving, and all of that's posted on our website. We've put out information to restaurants for restaurant employers and their employees to be safe and healthy during the pandemic. And we, as customers who are frequenting those essential businesses and interacting with those staff, need to maintain our social distancing. A lot of folks are wearing face coverings. People can choose to do that, and we have a fantastic infographic on face coverings on our coronavirus website. So I encourage folks to visit that. A couple of other key points as we continue to identify laboratory confirmed cases. We are interviewing those people. We're doing what's called a contact investigation. We isolate those people. We identify anybody who they've had contact with who is at high risk for exposure, and we quarantine those people for 14 days. And the research is showing that the people who are at the highest risk for exposure, second to healthcare workers on the front lines, are actually household contacts. So when we're doing our contact investigations, especially given all the social restrictions we have in place now, it is those household contacts who are at highest risk. And those folks, again, are being put into quarantine. One other immediate topic, of course, is the outbreak that's happening at the nursing home in Woodland. I know there's a lot of public information and discussion about this. Because of privacy rights, am not able to identify the nursing home. We want to respect the privacy rights of the residents of that nursing home and the families and the staff who are undergoing incredible emotional stress at this time. However, I know there's a number of media sites and people in the public who have identified that nursing home. I can tell you that at this point, we have a total of 35 cases, 23 are residents and 12 are staff, and unfortunately, there has been a death of a resident in that nursing home. We are we are in a heroic effort to contain the spread within that facility. The state has sent resources and staff. The community of Woodland has truly risen to the occasion. Dignity Health has sent staff over. Some of our local restaurants are providing food. The kitchen at the facility had to close because of the number of staff who were sick and infected and had to stay home and be isolated. So we're working really hard to contain the outbreak there. And the reality is, when you look across the nation, these nursing homes are extremely high risk for outbreaks. These are the most susceptible people to the severest impacts of this infection. So 4 weeks ago or more, we actually instituted an order in our county to severely restrict visitors to prevent spread from coming in from the community. We instituted orders for all nursing home staff to be screened for COVID-19 symptoms before they start a work shift, and for those facilities to take their temperatures before they start a shift and after. And even with these efforts in place, we unfortunately have seen this outbreak at a nursing home in Woodland. Just a couple of further additions, and then my update will be over. There is work on vaccines and treatment. There are several human trials going on already. There are 3 companies in the U.S. alone that have started trials. Unfortunately, and vaccine is what is desperately needed to really put an end to this pandemic. The measures we have in place are going to help for sure, and there's evidence already they're helping, but a vaccine is desperately needed. Unfortunately, the researchers and the pharmaceutical companies are telling all of us that a vaccine will not be available likely till mid to late 2021. Treatment as well is a ways off. My last comment or update is a reflection on the governor's recent announcement about a roadmap. And he spoke today and talked about what it might take and what it might look like to roll back some of these social restrictions. The plan that he put out did not have a timeline. And so we don't know exactly when this might occur, but it's a challenge when you look across this huge state at the geographic variations from county to county. There are counties that have hotspots, have outbreaks like we do at nursing homes. That's happening in many places in California. There are some rural counties that have 0 cases, and some counties that have little to no testing capacity, which really makes it hard to do the isolation and quarantine routine. So the governor outlined 6 indicators that all of us are tracking very closely along the lines of testing capacity and isolation and quarantine. And he said that he would revisit a lot of this in the next couple of weeks as the beginning of May approaches. I have to just be real honest with folks that once there are indications that we can start rolling back social restrictions, it will be a very slow, methodical, thoughtful process. It's not like we're going to just flip on the light switch and go back to normal. That will not be happening. The governor mentioned, for example, that gatherings of hundreds, if not thousands of people are way far in the future. Not sure when that's going to happen. And as well, any restrictions we loosen need to continue to protect the elderly and those with chronic health problems and nursing homes and folks that are at the highest risk. And when it does come time to loosen our social restrictions, we'll be monitoring all our data closely. And if there are signs that we're sliding back, then we're going to need to put the restrictions back in place. So there's still a lot of challenges ahead of us. And I really, really appreciate the amazing efforts of everyone in our communities that have come together to rise to this occasion. That's my update, and I'm happy to answer questions, your comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chapman, and welcome to our meeting. I'm going to start with the Mayor Pro Tem. He has questions for Dr. Chapman.
Yes, Dr. Chapman, first of all, thank you so much for the diligence you have shown in this pandemic and all of the helpful information you have been sharing with the various communities of Yolo County. We truly appreciate what you and your colleagues are doing for all of us. As we look forward, currently we have a shelter in place policy until the end of April. When do you have any feeling for the need to extend that, or if you will be monitoring the situation, when might you be making a determination as to when it might be possible to move beyond sheltering in place?
Sure, that's a great question. I appreciate that. And just a couple of perspectives. When we put these restrictions in place, the Bay Area did it first, Yolo County was next, the Sacramento region next, and then there was a statewide order. Some folks, counties in Southern California had not even put out a directive or order to stay at home. And now, as we're considering how we would go back on all of this, we have a statewide order in place. So our ability at the local level to roll back some of these restrictions is very limited given the state order that's in place. And we've had a number of calls just in the last few days, including a statewide call this past Saturday, to talk about how would we do that from a regional basis, given the geographic variations. The state's role in rolling back some of these restrictions is going to be key because, again, we'll be limited in terms of how much we could roll back locally as long as that state order is in place. That all said, our local stay-at-home order is in place, our shelter-in-place order is in place until May 1st. And I assume sometime before that, we will reissue an order. That order might have some modifications, but those modifications, again, are going to be limited by what the state is doing and their thinking and what the data is showing. I hope that makes sense to folks.
It does. Thank you.
Sure.
I have no further.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Rodriguez.
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. No questions from me, just a little, amazed about the rate of testing that we have in the state and in our county. And one thought that does come across is once the lockdown is lifted, we have some guidelines in place, right, that we want to have folks to continue to follow. And I believe, Dr. Chapman, that the county is going to be leading along with us in the city as far as reminding folks to continue to wash their hands. And I imagine we're going to still see folks out there taking those precautionary measures of, covering their face and whatnot. So hopefully the community is taking these slower steps once we reintegrate back into society to make sure that they're continuing to stay safe. But I appreciate the update, Dr. Chapman. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Councilmember Barajas.
thank you. Yeah, if I could just comment,
Sure.
This is Dr. Chapman again, I apologize. I was reminded by the comments about the governor's announcement today. He had a description of what restaurants might look like in the future. And he said there'll be very few tables in a restaurant, many less tables. He said the servers will all be wearing masks. They'll all be wearing gloves. He's described a new norm for the future along the lines of the comment that was just made. So it'll be a really different society at that point. Thank you.
Impressive. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Barajas.
Hi, Dr. Chapman. Thank you for all of your leadership here in Yolo County. I have questions regarding masks. Can you tell us, the community, the pros and cons of wearing a mask? And do you encourage that our residents of Woodland and Yolo County find masks or a scarf or something to protect themselves?
Sure, I appreciate that question and would just start by referring folks to our infographic, which is at www.yolocounty.org/coronavirus. Great infographic there. So there, honestly, there's a lot of debate about this. And And when we talk about face coverings, we're talking about the cloth-made face coverings at home, bandanas, scarves, and there is no evidence that those prevent the spread of infection. So the question is, is there a value at all of doing this, and what potentially is the downside? So the first important point is, if you're wearing something like that, it might, if you have no symptoms, prevent you from spreading the infection if you happen to be infected and don't have any symptoms. If you're sick and have symptoms, you shouldn't be out at all, because you clearly will be spreading the infection. So a lot of the talk is about people who have no symptoms covering their faces because maybe there's a chance of what's called asymptomatic spread, so spreading the infection when you don't have symptoms. The downside is surgical masks and N95s, which can protect folks in the infected situation where somebody is clearly sick and infected. Those are in such short supply that we are desperate to preserve those for our frontline healthcare workers. And so the risk of talking about mask and face coverings is, if folks start trying to purchase all of that for their individual public use, we're not going to have them to protect our first responders and our doctors and nurses and everybody else in the hospitals and clinics, and we need that desperately. So it's really, when it comes to public messaging, weighing the risks and benefits. And, if folks feel like wearing a face covering at work as an employee, or when they go out shopping, a self-made cloth face covering or bandana or scarf, there's really no downside to that. But I have seen people out biking with N95 respirators, which I find that very concerning. I mean, that is a waste of a valuable resource during this crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chapman. And I got another question for the doctor. In regards to the recent outbreak and the recent, I believe 35 individuals were infected. I believe one of them unfortunately passed away. Could we, or have you or the county been able to identify the facility? And if not, were other members of very similar facilities being contacted, so to ensure that, if it wasn't that facility that was infected, at least those members of the family knew that their family member wasn't at risk?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. So we're working very closely with the facility from the minute we discovered a case. The facility immediately notified all family members and residents and staff. We also notified the surrounding healthcare systems to give them a heads up that we were going to be identifying a number of sick people, so that the emergency department and first responders and all knew about the situation. So yeah, everybody was really well informed. And then every case that we confirm through laboratory testing, we do our contact investigation, we do our isolation and quarantine. All that has been going on for the last few days.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Fernandez.
Dr. Chapman, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I've got no comments or questions for you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Fernandez. Dr. Chapman, this is Rich Landsberg. I have a couple of questions. First, I want to thank you very much and wish you the best in your work. You're probably not getting very much rest right now. But I want to thank you for the informative briefings that you provide. The recommendations, they're very solid, they're very clear. And I do appreciate what you've done to get the word out, protect all of the community. Certainly these pills are very hard to swallow, but nonetheless, we have to swallow them. My question is this, I have a couple questions. Um, Given the spike at our skilled nursing facility in mid-April, what effect do you think that'll have on an apex for our community here in Woodland?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think folks need to understand that a facility outbreak is not the same as a community outbreak. These facilities are contained in their outbreaks, and although the numbers of cases in Woodland have really shot up, it's because of the cases that we've confirmed at this nursing home. So the numbers in the community are staying low because people are staying at home and they're practicing social distancing, and those are all really good signs.
Thank you very much. And given that there is an outbreak at a nursing facility, what are we or what can we do to safeguard the other? We have several facilities in Woodland, and what are we doing to protect them, residents, as well as the staff?
I appreciate that question. You know, as I mentioned earlier, there are outbreaks in these facilities all over the state and country. And we in public health are very concerned about these facilities because of the highly susceptible population they serve. And so we've instituted orders to really change the practices in these facilities and to try and prevent what has happened at Stolwood, or I'm sorry, at the nursing home. And so, you know, what we're doing is we're having calls with a number of these facilities. We're implementing a number of educational practices that we've never done before, and they're using personal protective equipment, masks, gloves, gowns, face shields, which they have, you know, don't typically do during their regular daily practices. There's just a number of measures that we've implemented, but the reality is that these folks are highly susceptible. So the smallest introduction of a virus into these facilities can lead to exactly what we've seen at the nursing home in Woodland.
Thank you, Doctor. I'm going to be a little philosophical with you, and my question is this. What about the current crisis that worries you the most as our county health officer?
Oh, what worries me the most? Yeah, unfortunately, it's the long-term health and economic impacts of all of the measures that we put in place. And we've really, I believe, had no choice but to put in the restrictions that we've put in. We're seeing this all over the world. Every country in the world, and certainly in Europe, in France, in Spain, in Italy, they've all been implementing these very severe social restrictions. And those impacts have the greatest impact on our already hugely vulnerable and underserved populations. So, you know, you're hearing the stories about escalating, skyrocketing unemployment rates and all of that. I mean, those are going to have very long-term health implications for our entire society. So although I'm very focused on containing this pandemic, my biggest concern are the long-term outcomes.
Thank you, Doctor. And
Sure.
Narrowing it down to Yolo County, what gives you the most hope as our doctor?
Oh, you know, I am just inspired every day by the people of this county. I mean, all of the cities, the city managers, the city councils, mayors, the general public. I'm just so in awe of how our communities have risen to the occasion. And, you know, I'm on daily calls with folks from all over the state. And I've got to say that I really think that we all, the people of Yolo County, have risen to this occasion like no other county I've heard of in the state. So that gives me a lot of hope.
Thank you, Doctor. I'm going to ask you a very dangerous question. It's this.
Okay.
If you had a wedding to do on July 18th, what would you do?
July 18th?
Yes,
How many people are invited?
200 plus.
How many?
200 plus.
Oh, yeah, that's not happening.
Not happening.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Doctor. That's all I have.
Yeah.
I have to go home and break the news to my wife.
That's my crystal ball. Just given what the governor said today, I mean, he really made it sound like large gatherings like that are not going to happen for quite some time.
Okay. I appreciate the
Yeah.
honesty and thank you so much for appearing before council today. You've been very helpful.
Yep.
Any last
Thanks for the
questions for
invite.
Dr. Chapman before he goes? Hearing none. Thank you, Dr. Chapman, so much.
Yep. Thank you. Take care.
That was a great discussion. Thank you, council members. We're going to go back to item G5, which is the nonprofit initiative. City Manager.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So this is an item that I've mentioned at least on the last two meetings. There's been an effort initiated by several groups, the first and foremost Yolo County, as well as the Yolo Community Foundation, have taken on the effort of helping all of our cities in the county coordinate relief efforts. We have all been bombarded by either organizations or individuals in our communities that have needs, and the ability for us to respond to each of those individually is challenging. And so this effort was really initiated to help bring some focus and order to identifying where those needs are in our communities, and then aligning an effort, a joint effort to generate revenues and funding necessary through donations to help support those efforts in a more coordinated manner. Jessica Hubbard is Executive Director for the Yolo Community Foundation and has really been doing a great job to pull this initiative together. And I've invited her to come speak to the council regarding the initiative, its impetus, and its ultimate aspiration in terms of what it hopes to accomplish. The action before the council tonight, before I turn it over to Jessica, is seeking the City Council support for entering into an agreement with the foundation to support the effort, but also financially to contribute $25,000 initially towards the initiative. As part of the effort, the foundation and the partners as part of this initiative have offered each of the cities and the county to have representatives serve in multiple capacities. First and foremost, to have a council representative or two serve in an advisory capacity and leadership capacity to identify where those needs are in each of our respective communities, and the gaps that are currently identified in our communities to support those needs. And then secondly, there'll be a steering committee that will help guide grant applications that are submitted to the initiative, evaluate those applications against the criteria that are submitted, and then ultimately provide the awards to those groups. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jessica. I see you are up on the screen now. So appreciate you taking the time this evening to provide the council with a little bit more background and perspective on where this initiative is headed.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for having me here tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. My name is Jessica Hubbard. I'm the Executive Director of the Yolo Community Foundation. And the Yolo Community Foundation works to inspire and support philanthropic giving and provide philanthropic leadership in Yolo County. We are working on a three-pronged approach in partnership with Woodland, Winters, West Sacramento, Davis, and Yolo County. With first major initiative is a donor education campaign. We are working to get the message out to individuals throughout our community, throughout Yolo community, that the most important thing they can do to support one of the most important things they can do to support the community right now is to give directly to local nonprofits. So we want to help them understand what needs this crisis is creating, the obvious needs like job loss and food insecurity, but also some of the less obvious needs like increasing rates of domestic violence and child abuse, and real concerns for a lot of nonprofits that they'll go out of business during this time. We are also helping them helping to the local nonprofits to tell their really inspirational stories. We've been gathering those stories this week. And the things that nonprofits are doing to address needs right now are creative, they're effective, they're exciting, they're inspiring, and we want to share those stories with the broader community. And then finally, we want to ask the community to dig deep and give. It's hard right now. It's hard for all of us. We're all worried about our jobs and our income. But we want to ask people to do what they can. If that's a small gift, that's a big gift, to do what they can to help serve the community at this time. So that's the first prong, the donor education campaign. And the second prong is the fund itself. And I really appreciate you all considering tonight making a donation to support that fund. And the third prong is a technical assistance program. We heard from the very beginning of the crisis from local nonprofits that one big concern that they have is they're dealing with a lot of issues that don't come up every day. Sure, they deal with cash flow management all the time, but thinking about cash flow as a way to sustain themselves throughout the crisis is a completely different ballgame. Understanding the government stimulus package, knowing the difference between a layoff and a furlough and hours reductions, and what are the strategic impacts and the legal implications and so on. So we're in the process of lining up a series of trainings. We had the first one today for local nonprofits to help them navigate those issues. So the fund itself, to talk a bit more there, will be to support local nonprofits, primarily frontline responders. So the organizations that are addressing the issues that have been either created or exacerbated by COVID-19 and its economic fallout. We'll also likely do some funding to ensure the sustainability of the Yolo County nonprofit sector so that when we get through this crisis, there is still a sector left to rebuild on the other side. The fund is drawing on the expertise, as Ken mentioned, of city staff and elected officials via our steering committee and our leadership advisors group. We see this as really a joint effort, not only to make decisions about grant making, but also to understand needs, to communicate with our communities, to know where the gaps are, to get nonprofits to understand what resources are available and to access those resources. So I really appreciate you considering supporting us with a contribution. You are already supporting us with expertise and feedback and access to your community and so on. And I would love to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Jessica. Does any member of the council have a question for Ms. Hubbard? Hearing none. Mr. City Manager. Is he muted?
Sorry, I was muted there. I just wanted to conclude with a few remarks that, I think this initiative really does highlight another good example of why we are so fortunate here in Yolo County to just have such a collaborative spirit amongst our cities in our county and our nonprofits throughout our communities. Encourage the council's consideration. I think I failed to mention that the Board of Supervisors did seed fund this initiative in the amount of $250,000 at their meeting back in March. The City of Davis City Council did support it last week as well with an initial funding contribution of $50,000. And the City of West Sacramento City Council will be taking it up tomorrow at their council meeting. So there is broad support amongst the cities here in Yolo County, and encourage the council to follow suit. Again, we will characterize this initial contribution at $25,000 to be just that. I want to encourage the council, as we will, to be open-minded about as needs are identified throughout our communities, and as our understanding of the impacts that are experiencing amongst our residents and constituents throughout the county and our cities are identified. We may consider additional support towards the effort. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the council to consider the three actions that are identified in the staff report.
The first one, Mr. City Manager, is to adopt the resolution to participate. Is that correct? And the $25,000.
Yes, that is correct. Authorize us to enter into an agreement with the Yolo Community Foundation and support a $25,000 initial contribution.
Okay, we'll start with that piece of the item. Is there any council member that wish to make a comment or have a question for the city manager? or for the guest?
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilmember Rodriguez. I just have a comment. I want to thank the YOLO Community Foundation. Jessica, appreciate the overview. I think our community is going to feel, a sense of peace to know that they have a backbone behind them to look out for their well-being. So we appreciate the effort.
Thank you, Councilmember Rodriguez. Any other council member have a question or a comment? Hearing none, is there a motion on the resolution, the funding?
Move to approve,
Fernandez
Councilmember
moves.
Rodriguez.
I'll second that, Fernandez.
The motion is made by Councilmember Rodriguez, seconded by Councilmember Fernandez. Madam Clerk, a roll call vote, please.
Yes, Councilmember Barajas,
Aye.
Councilmember Fernandez,
Yes, yes,
Mayor Landsberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stallard.
Yes.
Thank
Thank you.
you. The item carries on a 5-0 roll call vote.
Okay, now the next part, Mr. City Manager, is to ask for designated individuals from the council to participate on the governance board.
Yes, that is correct. Again, the initiative offers jurisdictions to identify one or two actually council members that are interested to serve in the capacity of leadership advisory.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a volunteer or two to participate on this very outstanding group of individuals involved in this foundation.
Yes, Mayor Landsberg, this is Councilmember Barajas. I'd like to volunteer.
Thank you, Councilmember Rajas. Is there another volunteer?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Rodriguez, as
Thank
second
you so
volunteer.
much.
Thank you.
And do we have a motion then to designate Councilmember Rajas Rodriguez to serve as the city's liaison on this group?
Stallard
Fernandez will
moves.
make the motion. I'll
I
second that.
I heard Fernandez first to make the motion, Stallard second. Madam Clerk?
Yes, Councilmember Barajas, Councilmember Fernandez,
Yes,
Mayor Landsberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stallard.
Yes.
Thank you. That item carries on a 5-0 roll call vote.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Anything else on that item, Mr. City Manager?
No, that concludes that item.
Thank you so much. That's going to take us to item number 7, the amended urgency ordinance. Mr. City Manager, please.
Great. So this is the third and final item under reports to city manager. As you recall, back at your meeting on March 31st, the city council did adopt an urgency ordinance establishing a moratorium, a temporary moratorium, I should say, on the evictions due to non-payment for rent for commercial tenants. And that was a follow-on to a prior action relative to residential tenants here within the city of Woodland. At that meeting, the council did request that staff consider and bring back for the council's review and potential adoption additional amendments to be incorporated into that urgency ordinance. So before you this evening is specifically an amended and restated urgency ordinance that incorporates several additional requirements, in this case, requirements that would be placed on the tenants themselves to demonstrate that they've taken steps to mitigate the financial impacts of COVID-19 and expressly mitigating those by applying for loan or grant funds through one or more programs that have been identified for relief of businesses that are impacted by COVID-19. Rather than read those off for you, they are articulated in your packets. I do have Ethan Walsh, who helped research and draft these, is also available if the council has any questions on those. Did receive feedback, at least from one commercial landlord here within the city of Woodland, appreciating the council's consideration of this additional request, as landlords themselves, as we know, are impacted as well. And at least to date, have very little relief identified to support them through this. So they are certainly appreciative of the council's desire and effort to ensure that the businesses that do take advantage of our urgency ordinance are also being responsible and pursuing available relief funds. So with that, I will turn it back over to the council for questions and any comments.
Thank you. Before we do that, I'm going to invite Mr. Walsh. If you have any comment on this item, you let us know.
I don't. The city manager, I think, summarized it pretty well. What we did is we added a section requiring that in order for them to have the protections that are provided in the ordinance, that they would also make an effort to receive these, to at least seek the additional sources of funds. We listed as examples some of the programs that are in place based on the new Federal CARES Act, as well as some efforts that have been made by the state. And then we had kind of a catch-all where that anticipated that in the future there may be additional programs that come into play where they could also potentially seek mitigation for the strain that they're suffering under the current state of affairs. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Does any member of the council have a question or a comment for either the city manager or the city attorney?
Mr. Mayor, this is Mayor Pro Tem Stallard. The amendments aren't quite what I was hoping for, but I feel that at this point in the game, we might as well go forward. It's a limited duration amelioration of 60 days in any event. So I'll be supporting the motion tonight.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Stallard. Any other member? Hearing none, I have one comment. I'm pleased, the city manager, that staff took a look at this and added the provisions. I think it's item under D in that area. And the specific word that's important to me is that these large corporations must make attempts to mitigate before they pull the plug on grant. So I believe that's going to cover a lot of these issues with these major corporations. At the same time, protect our smaller businesses in this time of need. This time, if there's no further comment or questions, is there a motion? Any council member want to make a motion on this item?
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilmember Rodriguez. I'll go ahead and move.
Thank you.
I'll second.
The
Councilmember.
motion is by Rodriguez, seconded by Barajas. Madam Clerk.
Yes, Councilmember Barajas. Councilmember Barajas, your vote.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Fernandez,
Yes. Yes.
Mayor Landsberg,
Yes.
Councilmember Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stallard.
Yes.
Thank you. The item carries on a 5-0 roll call vote.
Do you want to dedicate this last part of our meeting to the individual we lost in the rest home? Bad for that family, and I wish that family well. All the families that are suffering because of the outbreak. Good night.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.